Year 11. Tonight's revision is on the character of Mickey from Blood Brothers. There's a bit of feedback in the background in here, so you'll have to just listen as carefully as you can, okay? So, your first exam, paper 1, has Blood Brothers on it. On this exam, or this section of the exam, you're going to be given 2 possible questions on Blood Brothers. Pick only one. Don't complete both, just one, okay? Choose the one that you can speak about the easiest. You might be asked about the character of Mickey, the character of Eddie, the theme of brotherhood. If you do, it's a Mickey and Eddie question, or the relationship between Mickey and Eddie. You might be asked about Mrs. Johnston, Mrs. Lyons, the theme of motherhood, being a mother, in which case that's a question on Mrs. Johnston and Mrs. Lyons, or the relationship between the two. You might be asked about Linda, Sammy, the theme of crime, or the theme of poverty, class, or society, or a word like that, okay? So what am I marked on? Your answer for Blood Brothers looks like a discussion of theme. That just means you talk about the theme, okay? Or a discussion, of the character or characters, okay? So you discuss the theme through the characters. Don't be frightened of picking a themed question. If it's the theme of motherhood, as I say, you talk about Mrs. Johnston and Mrs. Lyons, okay? If it's the theme of crime, you talk about Mickey and Sammy and the working class children and how they're obsessed with violent games and they glamorise crime. So you talk about the themes through the characters, okay? You've got to include references to the play. That just means things that happen or things that people say or do, okay? You back that up with some short quotes if you can. Your quotations don't have to be exact. You can say, Mickey says something like, "Gives a sweet," or whatever it is that you're trying to quote, okay? Or you can just put it in your own words, alright? Nearly half of your marks for this goes to discussion of the context. That's the background, the context and the social context that Russell wrote the play in, okay? So things like society, poverty, the class divide, the unfair education system, the secondary modern schools versus the grammar schools, and how if you belonged to a working class family, you were destined to go to a secondary modern school where the education didn't prepare you for anything other than factory work, which led to a blue collar, low paid job. Okay, if you were belonged to a middle class family like Edward, like the Lyonses that he's given to, then you were sent most likely to a grammar school where you would be taught academic subjects and you would be taught to get a white collar job, such as an office worker or something that would earn you some more money, okay? Nearly half of your essay should be discussion of that, okay? Right, the timings for this exam for the Blood Brothers section is 55 minutes, so nearly an hour to write about just Blood Brothers alone, okay? Try to write as much as possible. Don't stop. Aim for at least 2 sides of A4, if not more. You know, the full mark answers, 6-7 sides long. It needs to be a long essay, alright? When you stop writing, the examiner stops marking. So what will the question look like? You'll be given a choice, as I said before. Either A, write about the importance of Mickey in Blood Brothers. Okay, that's just an example. It may not be Mickey, it could be Edward, Mrs. Lyons, Linda, Sammy, any of the other characters, okay? Or B, write about the theme of poverty in Blood Brothers. And again, it may not be poverty, it might be crime, it might be motherhood, it might be brotherhood, it could be society. Write about the class divide, write about crime. It may not, of course, be poverty, but this is how it will be worded, okay? You will not have a copy of the play in front of you, so you've got to remember the events and you've got to remember short quotes, okay? Tonight, let's look at a question on Mickey. For example, what is the importance of Mickey in Blood Brothers? And it's worth 40 marks, hence it needs to be a long essay, not a short answer, okay? What you need to do is talk about the character, if you can, at the beginning, middle and end, okay? So if Mickey does come up as a child, you could say that he's streetwise. That means he knows how to look after himself on the streets. And as a young child, he's tough. He tells Edward, I know lots of swear words, you know, like the F word. He wants to impress Edward, so you could talk about that, okay? He demands a sweet from Edward. He says, doesn't he, gives a sweet. And he then takes the whole bag. He grabs all of them because he doesn't have access to sweets of his own. Russell, Willie Russell, the playwright, the author, he does this. He presents Mickey as quite forward and quite rude, really, here, if you think about it. He does that to show that being poor and not having access to treats makes Mickey very forward and a bit rude. He has to take what he can. Edward doesn't have to. He can give his sweets away because he knows there's plenty more where they came from. Mickey gets nothing. He's loyal as well. He says to Edward, this means we're blood brothers, we've got to stand by one another, and he sticks up for his friends. So you could talk about how he's loyal and he's quite fierce. He's interested in violent games and playing with toy guns as a child. He plays cowboys and Indians, and he says, Mam, you're dead, and pretends to shoot her. The working class children, like Mickey, are interested in guns because they look up to gangsters and to criminals. They admire them. Russell does this to show that because Mickey is poor, the lack of money will eventually force him to turn into crime. It's the only way that the poor have any opportunity really of making any serious money. So Russell's message is that if you keep people poor, if you don't allow them access to a decent education or to a decent job, and they are forced into very low paid work, then you cause a problem. You make them turn to crime, okay? At the moment, the whole thing's just a game, but it won't be when he is an adult. So you can talk about that. Now you need to learn these quotes. So say them over and over. Repeat them to yourself. Get your parents to test you. Stop the PowerPoint now and learn them. Repeat them. Say them over and over. Okay? Right, you can talk about Mickey as a teenager and a young adult. Okay? As a teenager, he's not interested in his education. He's not interested in learning. But it's not really his fault. His classroom is full of boredom and it's described as pointless, their education being pointless. The teacher laughs at him, doesn't expect much from him, and he says, you don't know, do you, lad? And that is what the teacher expects from working class children like Mickey. So nobody has high expectations of these children. The education provided is substandard, it's not good enough, okay? They expect him, the teachers expect him to be factory fodder, to go to a blue collar job, okay? The moment he's born into a working class family. He gets Linda pregnant at a very early age, just like Mrs. Johnston. And they have to live with Mrs. Johnston. They've got no house of their own. So the cycle of poverty continues. Mickey's made redundant from his blue-collar factory job, and he's made to queue up for hours on end at the dole. There are no jobs for him. When Edward comes home from university, Edward tells Mickey If he lost his job, he'd just say, screw you, and tilt his hat to the world. Okay? When he comes home, he says, I've got money. Don't worry, I've got money. Let's go and have a party. Let's go and have a Christmas party. I'll pay for it. Mickey is angry about this. He feels like he's got no pride left because he's got no job. He's been walking for hours. He's walking in circles, pointless, can't find a job, okay? Mickey says he doesn't wear a hat that he can tilt to the world. He means a businessman's hat, okay? This means nobody respects Mickey. He says, excuse the swear word, but you can quote swear words as long as you put the quotation marks around them. He says, you're a dickhead, and he tells Eddie to piss off. He says to Edward, I grew up because I had to. You didn't. Edward can still be young and free and enjoy his teenage years. Mickey can't because reality has hit for him. Mickey feels depressed because he can't look after Linda or his family. He's had this shotgun wedding. He's had to marry her. He does love her, but he has to marry her because he gets her pregnant. And he says, now, I used to hate that job in the factory, but now I'd crawl back to it for double the hours and half the pay. He feels angry that Edward has had opportunities in life and now goes on to get a decent job working for the council, and he didn't because he stayed with the poor family, so his education was poor and he's destined for a job in a factory. He's tempted into crime by his older brother Sammy, who says, where are you taking your tart for New Year? Nowhere. You've got nothing, like me mum. So being poor forces Mickey into crime, and he's tempted, isn't he? And he does the robbery with Sammy. The jury find him guilty and he's sent down for 7 years. He becomes hooked on antidepressants. He feels sad because he can't support his family and he feels like a failure. The pills stop his mind from dancing. And Russell does this to show that Mickey is forced into this situation by the fact that he's poor, by the unfair class divide and the way society was. Okay? If you've time, you need to deal with the end of the play. Okay? So you need to talk about how, desperate to help Mickey, he's out of jail now, desperate to help Mickey, Linda asks Edward to provide Mickey with a job and a council home for them. Okay? Mickey clocks on. Mickey realises, and he says it used to be sweets and ciggies that Eddie provided for him. Now it's a home and a job, and he even asks if his daughter belongs to Edward as well. Linda kisses Edward. She doesn't love him, but he provides just a moment of relief from the stress of her life. Mickey feels angry when he finds out the truth. And there's a madman around the town, and all that anger comes out and he goes looking for Edward. To his mum, he says it's you, and he blames his mum. You could have given me away. I could have been him. And he points to Edward. Mickey accidentally shoots Edward and the police shoot Mickey. Poverty and the class divide have split the brothers and caused the ultimate tragedy. Russell portrays Mickey in this way to show the audience that an unfair society has devastating consequences and causes problems. Now, how do I write it up? Below is one paragraph as an example. You need to write much more, but this is how you write it up, okay? I'll read it to you and then I'll explain it. Okay. Mickey is interested in violent games and playing with toy guns when he's a child. He plays cowboys and Indians and pretends to shoot his mum. Ma'am, you're dead. The working class children are interested in guns because they look up to gangsters and criminals. Russell does this to show that because Mickey is poor, the lack of money will force him into crime later in life. And Mickey admires the criminals when he's a child because crime is the only way that poor people like Mickey could make any serious money. Russell shows the audience that poverty causes crime. At the moment, the whole thing is just a game, but it won't be when he is an adult. Okay? So when you write it up, you talk about characters. See here, Mickey is interested in violent games, okay? The characters that are the things that you say, about the characters and the references that you pick and the short quotes that you give need to be relevant to the theme, okay? Try and punctuate what you say with a short quote. Ma'am, you're dead, okay? Then you tell the examiner what that shows about the character or the characters, okay? So that's this bit here. The working class children are interested in guns because they look up to gangsters and criminals. And then you discuss Willie Russell's message to the audience, okay? So Russell does this to show that because Mickey's poor, the lack of money will force him into crime. So why does Russell present the character in this way? You need to try and include that, okay? If you're struggling with that,